I took Miss Morstan home in Thaddeus Sholto's cab. She was very upset by what had happened and spoke very little. I promised that I would visit her the next day. Then I went to the address which Holmes had given me. It was the middle of the night, and the streets of London were black and silent. As the cab went along, I thought about everything that had happened. We had discovered the truth about some things. The death of Captain Morstan, the sending of the pearls to Miss Morstan, the advertisement, the letter. All these things were clear. Now there were other mysteries which we had to solve. Where was the Indian treasure? What was the plan found in Morstan's luggage? Who wanted Bartholomew Sholto to die? Where were the pygmy and the wooden-legged man? What did all these things mean? And what was the mysterious sign of 4? I hoped that Sherlock Holmes would discover the answer to these questions. Soon I arrived in Pinchin Lane, the address where Holmes had sent me. It was a very poor street, and the houses were old and dirty. I found house number 3 and knocked on the door. After some time, a face looked out from a window above. It was not a friendly face.
"Who are you?"
said the face angrily.
"What do you want?"
"Come down and open the door," I said. "I have something to ask you."
"Go away at once," said the face. "If you don't, I'll let out 50 dogs upon you."
"My friend, Mr. Sherlock Holmes," I began. At these words, the window suddenly shut, and a few minutes later the door opened. I saw an old man with grey hair and beard holding a candle in his hand.
"Come in, sir," he said. "I'm Mr. Sherman. I'm sorry that I was rude. I didn't know that you were a friend of Sherlock Holmes."
I went into the small, dirty house and stopped in astonishment. There were cages everywhere I looked. All the cages contained different kinds of animals. I could see their eyes shining in the candlelight.
"What does Mr. Holmes want?"
asked the old man. "A dog called Toby," I answered.
"Toby is my best dog," said Mr. Sherman. "He loves to follow strong smells, especially the smell of creosote. That's his favourite."
"That's why Mr. Holmes wants him," I said.
"Wait here. I'll go and get him."
The old man came back after a few minutes. He was pulling a dog on a lead. The dog looked very strange. It had very long ears and very short legs, and its eyes were large and sad.
"This is Toby," said Mr. Sherman. "He'll go with you. He's a friendly dog."
The dog licked my hand and wagged its tail. I put some money into Mr. Sherman's hand, and the old man gave me Toby's lead. When I got back to Pondicherry Lodge, I found Sherlock Holmes standing outside the door. He was smoking his pipe.
"Excellent, Watson,"
he cried when he saw me.
"You've done well. Good dog, Toby. Come here. Good dog."
Holmes took a handkerchief out of his pocket and gave it to Toby to smell. The handkerchief was covered with creosote. The dog went mad with excitement. His sad eyes shone with happiness, and his tail wagged.
"See how he loves the smell," said Holmes. "We won't have any problems now."
Holmes pointed at a drain pipe, which went down from the roof of the house.
"While you were away, Watson," he said, "I went up onto the roof and discovered how the pygmy climbed up and climbed down again. He used that drain pipe." The drain pipe ran all the way down from the roof to the garden below. There was a large barrel full of water under the end of the drain pipe. "He climbed down that drain pipe and onto the barrel beneath," said Holmes. "It was very easy to follow his trail. He left marks everywhere. He also dropped this." Holmes put his hand in his pocket and took out a small bag made of dried grass. I looked inside. To my horror, I saw 5 or 6 long, dark thorns.
They were the same as the one which killed Bartholomew Sholto.
"The murderer has lost these," said Holmes. "Let's hope that he doesn't have any more. Don't touch them, Watson. They are poisoned. But come, where's Toby? We must begin."
Holmes took Toby's lead and pulled the dog to the bottom of the water barrel. Toby smelled all round carefully. Suddenly, he began to bark excitedly. He had found his favourite smell, the smell of creosote. Then he started to pull at his lead.
"He's on the trail,"
cried Holmes.
"Let's go!"
The picture sequence from the cinema has finished. You can look at it once more if you want.
Toby pulled at his lead and ran quickly through the grass. He ran so quickly that it was difficult to follow him. The sky was beginning to get light now. Toby ran along the paths in the garden under the trees and bushes. Then he reached the garden wall and ran along beside it. Finally, he stopped at a place in the wall where the bricks were loose.
"This is the place where they got into the garden,"
said Holmes.
"It is easy to climb up and down here. Look, do you see this mark? It is the print of a man's hand."
He pointed at a flat stone. I saw a dirty handprint on the stone. Holmes picked up the dog and climbed over the wall. I followed. Toby soon found the trail again. Toby did not look to the right or the left. He ran straight ahead with his nose to the ground. He loved the smell of creosote. Nothing could stop him from following it. As we hurried along, I thought about the wooden-legged man and the pygmy. I wondered what would happen when we found them. I knew that they were dangerous. I wished that I had brought my gun with me. Toby was still following the trail. Now we were passing through small, narrow streets. The people were just beginning to wake up. The men were going on their way to work. The women were opening their windows and cleaning their houses. Suddenly, Toby ran down a path. This path led straight down towards the River Thames. Soon the river appeared in front of us. Toby ran faster and faster. The path went down to the water's edge. It ended at a small wooden jetty. Toby stopped. He ran backwards and forwards, trying to find the smell. He looked up at us sadly with his large eyes. He did not know what to do.
"They've got into a boat here,"
said Holmes. There was a small house beside the jetty. A notice was hanging from one of the windows. On it was written in large letters, "Mordecai Smith, Boats and Steam Launch for Hire." There was no one on the jetty. Several small boats were near the jetty on the bank of the river. Holmes looked at these boats.
"I wonder where the steam launch is," he said. "I think we must ask a few questions."
He knocked loudly at the door of the house. A large woman with a red face opened it. A child was crying somewhere inside the house. I saw that the woman was very upset about something. She had been crying.
"Good morning," said Holmes politely. "Are you Mordecai Smith's wife?"
"Yes," replied the woman. "What do you want?"
"Could I speak to your husband, please?" asked Holmes.
"No, you can't. He isn't here. I haven't seen him since yesterday morning."
"Oh," said Holmes. "I wanted to hire a boat."
"Well, perhaps I can help you," said Mrs. Smith. "Which boat do you want?"
"I wanted to hire the steam launch. I have heard it is a very good boat. Let me see, what's the name?
"The Aurora, sir," said Mrs. Smith.
Oh, yes, that's right. I remember now. But where is the Aurora?" said Holmes, looking around. "I don't see a steam launch anywhere."
"Oh, sir, my husband has gone in the Aurora,"
Mrs. Smith replied, and burst into tears.
"I'm very worried about him. I don't trust that wooden-legged man."
"What wooden-legged man, Mrs. Smith?"
asked Holmes in a surprised voice.
"I don't know who he is, sir. But my husband went with a wooden-legged man in the Aurora yesterday morning and hasn't come back.
The picture sequence from the cinema has finished. You can look at it once more if you want.
"I'm very sorry to hear that, Mrs. Smith," said Holmes. "Tell me, was this wooden-legged man alone?"
I don't know, sir. I didn't see anyone else, but it was very dark. It was 3 o'clock in the morning. I could not be sure.
"What does the Aurora look like?" asked Holmes.
The Aurora is black, sir, with 2 red stripes down each side. It has a black funnel with a white stripe. The Aurora is the fastest boat on the river," answered Mrs. Smith.
Holmes looked worried. "That's very interesting," he said. "Try not to worry about your husband, Mrs. Smith. I am going up the river myself. If I see Mr. Smith, I will tell him that I have seen you. Goodbye."
"Goodbye, and thank you,"
said Mordecai Smith's wife. She had stopped crying. She went inside her house and closed the door.